The moment the spotlight hit Ilia Topuria's face, there was an undeniable fire in his eyes. The kind of fire that doesn't flicker, it burns. He stood tall in his tailored black suit at the National Sports Gala, the applause echoing through the grand hall as he accepted his award. But despite the formalities, despite the scripted appreciation, there was an unshakable restlessness in his demeanor. He wasn't just there to celebrate past victories. No, Ilia Topuria was there with a message. A message to the world, to the UFC, and most importantly, to the man who seemed to be running from him, Islam Makhachev. The question had been hanging in the air for weeks. Would Makhachev take on Topuria in a battle that could redefine the landscape of the lightweight division? Would the reigning lightweight champion dare step into the octagon against a man who had already obliterated legends at featherweight? The answer, it seemed, was no. Reports from Russia made it clear Makhachev wasn't interested. He had other names in mind. Arman Tsarukyan, Justin Gaethje, but not Ilia Topuria. And yet, standing under the dazzling lights, award in hand, Topuria smirked. The rejection, the politics, the whispers of doubt, it didn't faze him. If anything, it fueled him. "I've changed weight divisions," he announced, his voice firm, unwavering. "Now we have the conquest of another division on the horizon." The crowd erupted into cheers, the energy in the room shifting from polite admiration to electric anticipation. This wasn't just an athlete speaking. This was a man declaring war. For Topuria, the move to lightweight wasn't just about chasing another title. It was about liberation, about shedding the physical torment that had defined his time at featherweight. Anyone who had followed his journey knew the truth: his most brutal battles hadn't been inside the octagon. They had been in the mirror, staring at his own reflection as he pushed his body beyond its limits to make 145 pounds. He had faced the best in the world and won, knocking out Alexander Volkanovski and Max Holloway with precision that stunned the MMA community. And yet, the greatest challenge had been the scale. It was all documented, raw and unfiltered, in Topuria Matador, his upcoming documentary. A film that had captured, in excruciating detail, the moment his body nearly broke. The footage showed him sitting in agony, a lollipop in his mouth, his team's desperate attempt to ease his suffering as he struggled through the final moments of yet another impossible weight cut. His heart pounded.
His breath came in ragged gasps.
And as his brother's voice cracked with emotion, asking, "What's happening?" it became painfully clear this wasn't just about making weight. It was about survival. But survival wasn't enough. Topuria was done suffering just to fit into a division that no longer fit him. Moving up to lightweight was his rebirth, his chance to fight at his full strength, to unleash the beast within without being shackled by the brutal realities of weight cutting. He had fought at bantamweight, he had fought at featherweight, and he had conquered them both. Now, he was coming for lightweight. And no amount of rejection from Islam Makhachev would change that. Makhachev, of course, had his reasons. He had spent years crafting his dominance in the lightweight division, building his legacy under the guidance of Khabib Nurmagomedov. He was precise, methodical, a master of control. And maybe, just maybe, he saw something in Topuria that made him hesitate. Because Ilia Topuria wasn't just another contender. He was an anomaly. A fighter who didn't just win, he demolished. A man who didn't just talk, he delivered. And so, while Makhachev entertained other challengers, while the UFC debated the politics of matchmaking, Topuria sharpened his weapons. He knew what was coming. He knew that once he stepped into lightweight, once he made his debut, the world wouldn't be able to ignore him. He would make such a statement that even Makhachev himself would have no choice but to face him. The audience at the gala saw it in his eyes. The hunger. The inevitability. This wasn't a man asking for an opportunity. This was a man taking it. And as he stepped off that stage, as cameras flashed and murmurs filled the room, one truth became undeniable: Ilia Topuria's conquest of the lightweight division had already begun. Would Makhachev stop running? Or would Topuria have to chase him down? Ilia Topuria walked off the stage, the weight of his words still lingering in the air, each syllable leaving a mark in the minds of those who had just witnessed his declaration. This was no ordinary acceptance speech. It was an ultimatum. The conquest had begun. And though Islam Makhachev had turned his back on the challenge, the storm was already rolling in. Backstage, Topuria's phone buzzed nonstop. Social media was erupting. Debates were exploding across every MMA forum, and fans were already imagining what could be one of the greatest clashes in lightweight history. Would Makhachev respond? Would he be forced into the fight by the sheer will of the people? Or would he continue to look elsewhere, choosing opponents who didn't pose the same unpredictable threat that Topuria did? Topuria knew the answer before anyone else did. Because deep down, he understood what Makhachev was thinking. He knew that fighters like him weren't the kind of opponents champions welcomed. They were the kind of opponents champions feared. And why wouldn't Makhachev hesitate? Ilia wasn't a lightweight who had spent years losing and climbing back up the rankings. He was an undeniable force, a hurricane that had wiped out featherweight legends and now threatened to do the same at 155 pounds. But for all of Makhachev's reluctance, Topuria had already made up his mind. There would be no backing down, no waiting for permission. The conquest was already in motion. He had spent too many years battling himself, his own body, his own limitations, to let one man's hesitation slow him down. The agony of those weight cuts still haunted him. The memories of cutting down to 145 pounds, of feeling his body betray him, of his brother whispering desperate words of encouragement, it was all still fresh in his mind. He could still feel the lollipop in his mouth, the sugar tricking his brain into thinking it had energy left to burn. He could still hear his own heartbeat pounding in his ears, his body screaming for mercy. But that life was over. Now, at lightweight, he was free. Free to fight at full power. Free to test himself against the very best. Free to hunt. Makhachev might have thought he had control over the situation. He might have believed that by picking Gaethje or Sarukian, he was setting the course of his own destiny. But what he didn't realize was that destiny was already shifting beneath his feet. Because in MMA there are forces too powerful to ignore, and Ilia Topuria was quickly becoming one of them. The UFC had seen this before. They had seen the rise of those who refused to be denied. McGregor had done it. Adesanya had done it. And now Topuria was doing it. This wasn't about waiting for an opportunity. This was about forcing the fight to happen, about making so much noise that even Dana White had no choice but to step in and book it. And Topuria was about to make noise in a way that Makhachev couldn't ignore. Training camp had already started. He wasn't waiting for an official announcement, he was acting as if the fight was inevitable. Every day, he sharpened his weapons. His striking, already world-class, was evolving into something terrifying. His ground game, long underrated, was being fine-tuned to counter the relentless grappling pressure of Dagestani wrestling. He wasn't just training for any fight. He was training for the fight, the one that would make history. Because Topuria wasn't just looking for another win. He was looking to shake the very foundations of the UFC, to take down the seemingly unstoppable Islam Makhachev, to send shockwaves through the lightweight division in the same way he had done at featherweight. The fans could feel it. The anticipation was growing. The demand for the fight was becoming louder. And at some point, even Makhachev wouldn't be able to run from it. The question wasn't if this fight would happen. It was when. And when it did, when Ilia Topuria finally stepped into that cage against Islam Makhachev, the world would be watching. The conquest was inevitable. And Ilia Topuria was ready to claim his throne.